Okay. I just need to go through this one more time. I apologize, guys. You get to be my guinea pigs on this. And it says I'm live. Hopefully it's not live on the right thing. So welcome to my first inaugural Wilmsey Bonati Big Bend Community College APA 7th edition webinar. First of all, I want to let you know this is a thimble full of information. I'm not going to be able to cover everything, and I want to accomplish a few things with this presentation. I'm going to put here something for you to look at. I hope, maybe later. Oh, sorry. I'm going to put a link in here. I'm sharing with you my Google Doc. As we go through, and most of my webinars, if you've ever attended them, I'm like, stop me anywhere, ask questions. We'll be able to go back. On this one, you may ask me questions about APA that I want to provide you references for, like links, so you can see the actual images and the foundations behind those ideas. So instead, I may type them into the document, I'll fill it out, and I'm going to email you guys this document afterwards. Some things I can answer off my head, but some things I cannot. And I want to make sure I give you responsible and correct information. If you want to look at the links that I'm talking about, you now have the document as I'm working on it. And again, at the end, I will save it with things that you've asked me. So tell me a little bit about your citation experience. Are you comfortable with APA? What are you working on? What's going on? And how do you feel about it? How do you really feel?
Well, for me, I've been using it in classes, almost all of my classes. And I ended up buying the reference book so that I can double check everything when I read out my papers.
This one?
Yes.
This one. This is an excellent book. But sometimes students are faced with an issue if they're doing APA, MLA in Chicago. That's a lot of expensive books to buy. So, and while I'm prepping and showing this presentation, I'm going to show you an authoritative source that you can use now for free. But I always advise to get the book. And I'll explain why I'm using that particular source as we go through. Tim, do you have some experiences with a citation or documentation you wanted to share?
I'm trying to log on. My thing is saying my Google Doc account is not working.
Oh.
Yeah, I can't get access either.
Okay.
Yeah, I got access denied.
Okay, so I'll work on my sharing document next time because it says sharing, but it's not sharing.
Oh, is that what it is? I'm like, what's wrong? I know my passwords.
It's I don't know. It says, but I'll fix it. The end document will be far more fabulous anyway. So, Tim, tell me about your experiences with documentation in your academic life.
I'm strictly an MLA guy, which you know, but you know, I'm trying to broaden my horizons and look at new ways of doing things.
Well, a lot of us will have preferences. We have a lot of faculty on the history staff that swear by Chicago, and they get very injured when they don't see it always represented in some of the things we do. So
that's because
it is something.
Chicago, but them.
They love it though. I kind of picked hamburgers and French fries because I wanted to talk about that issue, the MLA, the APA in Chicago. As students and faculty, we have to understand all of these things to some degree. And let somebody in. We have John Anderson, who will be coming in. Hello, John Anderson. How are you? So anyway, so I'm using the hamburger because it's kind of how citations and documentations are. A lot of people have different ideas. Some people think you need to have a very cold items together, like you have to have your lettuce up against your tomato and the cheese has to be on the bottom, but they have like where the mayonnaise, where the ketchup goes, or what goes on or doesn't go in there. And that's a really good illustration for the documentation and citation life between all the different ones. We're going to be focusing on APA, and it organizes its pieces in different ways. And also we'll be looking at the fries. That will be the in-text citations, because when you're looking at references, citation, and documentation, you have a situation where inside of your text, you're going to create a signal phrase. Usually it's an author and date in this case, but it has to connect at the bottom to a reference. And APA will be showing those references. Those are going to be at the bottom. Some people call it a bibliography. If you're still in MLA world, you'll think about them as works cited, but they're at the end. And these pieces have to be matchy-matchy, sort of like your burger with your fries. So they have to go together. So I'm going to show you how to build those, how to find ways to look around them. Essentially, what we're going to be looking at are essential citation elements. And these are true all across the board, just like the concept of the hamburger. Authors, publication dates, titles, format descriptions, journals, magazines, newspapers, web page names, URL, DOIs, what are those things? But these are the essential pieces no matter what you're using. And today we're going to talk about APA briefly as it uses it. Now, at its most basic, anytime there's information that you're using from another source that's not common knowledge, you're going to need to cite it. And this is going to provide a way to do that, both in text and narrative, and also to put it in your references. You're going to need to work, and when you're working at academic level, to attribute the work of others, because that's how you build your own work. You don't operate off feelings, you operate off others' work and bring that into your work as you do your research. Now, these are going to be some of the basic pages I want to show you. But basically, we're going to be looking for author who is responsible for this work. Now, these when was the work published? What was the work called? And where I can retrieve this work. If you can sort of understand that who, when, what, where, that's the essential basis for an APA reference. Who, when, what, where. And then there's different rules if those things should disappear. Now, when we're talking about APA, you can clearly see, I think some of you have this book, it's very large. I'm talking about probably 1% of what APA is. I'm not talking about how to set up the paper, but I have links to that. It also talks about a writing style, how you use numbers, how you use hyphens, how you refer to people with diseases. It has a different type of ethics system in dealing with different people, experiments. It talks about building tables and all that. And today, I'm just talking about the very basic things I think will get you through Big Bend Community College and a little bit into the next place you're going. So these are the very basic ones, and you should save all of these pieces. If I showed you the breathtaking myriad of pieces, I might panic you a little bit. So what I wanted to do was start with a mid-level APA reference, and it is one for an academic article. There are far simpler ones, and there's far more difficult ones, but this is probably one of the representative pieces. I'm going to go through this, and I'll repeat it a couple of different ways. We're going to go through the elements specifically, and we're going to build I'm going to build a reference for you. And then at the end, we're going to have a practice piece and deal with references the way that we mostly see them now. And that is when we're using databases or PubMed or other places that give us citation suggestions, I like to call them. I always advise you when you see a suggestion for a citation to copy and correct, don't copy and paste. So we're going to go through 4 of those and fix those once we've gone through this information. So if you remember, I was talking about the part up here about the who, what, when, why. The reference begins with authors, and the authors are in a certain order. The authors are last name, first initial. And then there's different rules about that we'll look into. The next part of an APA reference for most everything is going to be the date, the publication date. And the magic reason for this is when you see it in a list of references, it's going to be alphabetized by author, and the second thing will be the date. So when you read it in the body of the article, apples are poison, Botto, S, 2018, you can match it to the references underneath. So that's why it always starts with author and date, because it pairs up with your writing. The next thing that follows will be the title. The title has a couple of different rules, primarily regarding capitalization. The title section can include other things. If it's talking about something like a podcast or YouTube, sometimes there are descriptors for the thing that you're using. But in this case, with a journal, there's nothing in this title line. The next section will be sources. Where was this? This will be the journal name, volume, issue number, and beginning and ending page numbers. And this ends with a DOI. A DOI is a digital object identifier. It's used now in MLA and APA. You can find them and verify them at a place called crossref.org. Have that link in the bottom. And when you have a choice between the URL in the browser or digital object identifier, APA asks you to use the DOI. So that's why it's represented in this example. So I'm going to go through this example in a different way. Here is a little piece from EBSCO. Let me bump up my screen a little bit. And you can see I found an article and it has an APA suggestion. It's wrong. It's an incorrect one. So when you use these, I want you to remember clearly to copy and correct. By the way, these are extremely useful and I do copy them because they usually have all the pieces and that's really important. But if you turn this in, it's wrong. And we'll go through the pieces, but the author element's wrong. The capitalization of the title is wrong. And we really need to look to see if it does have a DOI or a URL or what the situation is. So we need to examine the actual piece. And that's something from EBSCO Academic Search Premier. There are things around it that are correct on different ones, but always copy and correct them. Some are closer than the other. And usually it is a capitalization of the titles. These two sections are the hamburger and fries. The reason I chose to base this on the APA style manual is that that's the people who create the burgers. The 7th edition just came out. There was 10 years of using APA 6th edition and it just went to 7th. And as things changed, they couldn't change the book, but they changed information on the APA site. So somewhere in the 6th edition, things like Facebook, blogs, Snapchat, and all these things happened. They weren't in the book, but they were inside of apastyle.org. So I really need to, in the next years, when you see something show up, like Clubhouse has not yet made it, but yet it has made it online. It's not going to be in the book. Clubhouse is a new social media platform. Please send me an invite. I haven't gotten one yet, and I really want to catch up on it. So we're going to go up here. I'm going to move this down a little. And this is the references. And this is why this is extremely helpful for you. This is the main page, and it has text, online media. It has links that takes you to the pieces. And let's go to that journal article reference. It has a journal article. If it has one with missing information, it has retracted journal article. And if you've been keeping up with COVID, there are quite a few retracted articles that you might use in your piece to show the danger of preprints and retracted articles. So it has a lot of the pieces of the things that may happen to you. Further, it gives you parenthetical citations and narrative citations examples. And you will have a journal article. What this calls on you to do is to model your piece after it. And here, almost everything I'm going to talk about to you is right underneath this piece. I don't expect you to remember anything I say today. What I would like you to do is understand when you see these elements, the author, the date, the title, the sources, that different citation styles treat them differently. It's a chance for you to look that up, ask for help, or consult a book. And here with APA, you have them available to you free without the use of the book. You can also search the APA style blog for things that you can't find. So this shows you what to do with the different things that you have and don't have, but primarily you're going to see the author's last name, middle initials, first and middle initials. They're not connected with an A and D, they're connected with the ampersand. Ends goes into a publication date that's in parentheses, ends with a period. It has a title. This title uses something called sentence case. Sentence case is where nearly nothing is capitalized except for, in this case, the first word of the title, a word following a colon, and a proper noun or noun phrase. And this example shows this pretty clearly. It ends with a period. The next piece would be the source information. It begins with the journal name. The journal name is the exact opposite of the title. It is in title case. That means almost everything is capitalized except for prepositions, articles, and conjunctions. It is italicized, as is, and this is the hardest thing about the journal reference, I think. The journal name is italicized. The volume name is italicized. Next to it is the issue number. It's in parentheses, comma, and here you need beginning and ending page numbers. It's very important. If you neither have a beginning or ending page number, don't put it in there. Go ahead and end it with a period. So in APA, instead of having a lot of symbols for different things that are missing, if there's no pages, there will be no pages. Don't include it. If there's no issue number, don't include it. If there's no volume number, don't include it, and just end with a period. So it has a particular beauty like that. And in the war against DOI, URL, or nothing at all, this particular article had a digital object identifier, and this one appears as a URL. Right now, we're sort of in a place where there's some overlap, where it could be presented as a link or as a DOI colon and the number, which is this. This is what the DOI number looks like all by itself. Do you guys have any questions so far? I'm going to kind of repeat this like 5 different ways during this presentation, but I just want you to see how you can look at this and help model your own work. So the next piece, the most important piece, is what leads you to your references. And that will be your citations. So if you have your references up there, you have all the different pieces. You have podcasts, you have all these things. Here, that you have help with paraphrasing quotations. It talks about basic principles of parenthetical versus in-text in case you don't quite understand what that means. Usually it helps break up your writing. Some professors will have a preference for narrative just to kind of get rid of all the parentheses. The parenthetical or the in-text citations are going to be inside commas, and the color is going to go down to your references, and you'll find color in 2016. One of the hardest things to remember about this is where to put the period. It is outside the parenthesis. You might not remember that. Hopefully you'll remember just to go check on this. Narrative citations are a little bit more seamless. They're going to be inside your piece. So you would have color refer to the publication date, and then your summary or paraphrase of what it says. You can also put in 2016 outside of it and do it in this fashion. So you have your references at the bottom, and these are the pieces inside of your work that signals the person what these items actually are. So they should be matching. Hamburgers and fries. Does that part make sense to you guys a little bit?
Yes.
Okay. So when I send you this after the presentation, just remember those are the 2 big pieces that will help drive you through Big Bend Community College and also help you get through a significant amount of work in your next place. So I've already shown you this particular example, but I included it in the presentation so you could look at it. So now we're going to get down to some real work. And I'm going to be typing on this document because in a way, I want you to feel how it feels to do this by hand and think about it as you're working. So I have an example, and this is a story of my source that I found. This article says apples are poison. It was written by Granny Smith, PhD, and Silas Elijah Mopes. It was published in November of 2020. The journal name is The Journal of Johnny Appleseed. The article is on pages 6 to 10. It has a digital object identifier and a URL. The title is Far from the Tree, the Poison in All Apples. So when we're breaking this down, the first thing we need to do in APA is consider the authors. Last name, first initials. So Smith, comma, G is how we'd represent the first name. Now, Granny Smith has a PhD. Now, this is awesome when you're doing your annotations or you're analyzing or evaluating this information, but academic credentials do not appear in your piece. So just understand that, oh, that represents authority. Move along to the next name. So next person has first and middle names and a last name. Here is a place where sometimes students get lost. Don't use an and, use an ampersand. And next thing we do is Mopes is his last name, or Silas is S period, E period. Does that make sense to you guys? Suppose there was another person. We'll just randomly throw in Smith Jack, one of those people, and S period. And that's what it would look like. Now, suppose there's 20 or 30 authors, which I'm not going to type out for you. In APA, you will show 21 authors. You will type them all in this form. And when you get to the 20th, you will go into an ellipsis and only use the last name past the 20s. Now you're wondering, how am I ever going to remember this? This is terrifying, Rhonda. I'm very upset. You lured me in with hamburgers and fries, and now there's an ellipsis, and I have to type out 20 names, last name, first initials. This is what this is for. When you go to this page, it's going to give you all the examples. I have one author. I have two authors. It clearly shows the ampersand. I have more than two authors. I have 21 authors. And this shows you exactly how to format your authors. And it's an easy link for you to get to. Because you'll probably remember the first two ideas, but the other idea, I almost always have to come to look for how the ellipsis looks like and try to remember if they put in an ampersand or not. This is something, even using this for many years, that still paralyzes me. So I want you to know that I too, when I'm working on my own work and grading, this is what I'm using to grade papers and construct myself, because it's hard to memorize all of this information. So the importance is understanding where to get the help. So guys, do you think you understand the author element now?
Yeah.
And should you not have your author element, there's other rules in that section. It goes to the title, the next element with words in it, and you'll use the title as the author. So again, that might be something you don't remember, and this particular link will help you out. Now, in my example, this was published in November of November the 20th. So I'm going to put this here, and we're going to go on to the publication, the date piece. I'm going to put a parenthesis. I'm going to put 2020 first, comma, and November. Do not fall for the abbreviations. In the publication section of APA, spell out the month entirely. If there is a date, you would put it here and put it inside. But this doesn't have one, so I'll end it here and I end it with a period. The author element ends with a period. The date element ends with a period. The title element ends with a period. So what would happen if this was not so? This is one of the places where there will be something for you to use for no date, because it is such a key part and it ends up in your signal phrase and your citations. And you will use this particular thing to check, because it has all the different ways the date should appear. Probably the most troubling thing for most people is spelling out the dates, because so many other citation styles do not do that. So the next piece we have, we'll just go copy this baby and keep building it, is the title element. The title element, if you remember, I told you was in sentence case. It has a very specific capitalization pattern. It's like a sentence with a couple of things different. Everything is going to be capitalized. No, see, nothing is going to be capitalized. But the first word that follows a colon, or a proper noun or noun phrase. Now, the name of this article is Far from the Trees. Far from the tree, the poison in all apples. I'm going to go ahead and end it with a period. I know the first word is capitalized and a word following a colon is capitalized. And I'll fix it thusly. The only other thing that could occur with that particular thing would be if you had an acronym like COVID, all capitals, that still stays the same, and the capitalization is considered like a proper noun or noun phrase. United States is capitalized. And this is one of the curveballs though. And that's why looking at the principles and the basic links I have up top may be helpful. Diseases aren't capitalized the way you think they may be. If the poison is, if I use the word diabetes, it would be a small d, flu, small f. But if I use Crohn's disease, because it's the name of a person who created it or had something to do with it, a real person, a proper noun, that would be capitalized. So Crohn's disease, the C would be capitalized, but disease would not. That's one of the tricky parts with some of the capitalization of diseases. And there's actually in the APA style blog a whole section on that very topic. So you're not lost. And it's also covered here. So that's some of the oddities. But for the most part, if you go with the sentence case, it will work. And I included here for you a definition and descriptions of sentence case. So title capitalization, does that make sense to you guys? All right.
Hey, Rhonda.
Yes.
With the author's names, like with the S.E. Mopes, would there be two periods after the E or just the one?
Just the one.
Okay, so as long as you got a period there, you're good.
Yes, you just need the one period. And that is something sometimes you go and check when you're looking, because you're going to have those questions. In fact, at some point, I might look at this in D because it may not be entirely capitalized, but I'll make sure if that's true to write that to you in my notes. So the next, and oftentimes too, students will leave out that author E and also the thing after the parentheses, because they think the parentheses ends the statement, but it doesn't. The parentheses with a comma on the outside is a common thing that appears a lot in APA. So if you're working on the lot, it'll sink in very rapidly. So the next part of this piece is the source element. Now, I've included here for you another inspiring piece on the description of title case, because we have the name of the journal, and it was the Journal of Johnny Appleseed, and this will be in title case. Almost everything is capitalized except for of, conjunctions, prepositions, and articles, except if it's a lead-in. So the Journal of Johnny Appleseed ends with a comma, unless there's nothing left. If you don't have a volume number, if you don't have an issue number, if you don't have beginning and ending page numbers, you would end here with a period. But we need to do a little bit more work with this. So you see in this case, this is what title case looks like. The of is not capitalized. These things are almost opposites in a way. So one thing this has rather, is italics. Now the next thing would be the issue and volume. Let me kind of go up here and see what my story is. And sometimes you'll find yourself doing this quite a bit. So I'm going to copy this and bring it down so I can work on it more. But oftentimes, make sure you have a way to get back to your references, because you will find yourself having to go back and check things. Like, what was going on with that situation? So I'm just going to put this here so I can keep looking at it. And I see it has page, beginning and ending page numbers. It has a DOI, but it does not have a volume or issue number. So it will not be here. But just in case it did, the issue number, say it's 20, and if the volume number is 20 and the issue number is 1, it's very important to make sure that the volume number is also italicized as part of the source information. This is one of the easiest things to forget. In fact, when I'm working on APA, I create my own checklist of things that I forget. And that is one of the things I make sure I check. As people grade your papers and turn them back, if you see you're making consistent errors, don't beat yourself up about those. Turn it into a checklist. This happened to me. I embarrassed myself greatly with the paper I published. And one of the peer reviewers came back at me and let me know I was missing. I had something in my references that didn't have a citation in the body of the paper. So what that means, as a researcher and writer, I had somewhere either something that was plagiarized and I didn't attribute it, or I had a reference that I never actually used in my paper. So it's very important to go through all these little pieces, because people will see your errors sometimes. But when people provide you with that painful, horrifying feedback, turn it into a checklist. So now when I do APA, I will go through all my in-text citations and check off my references to make sure they're all matching. And in one of my previous jobs, I had a professor that sent me her students so that I would do that. And I would be glad to do that for any of you as well. Just bring me your paper. We can sit across from each other or do it on Zoom, and we can go through each one to find out what's missing, make sure it's right. That's one of the ways that you use your library or your writing center. We're very excited to help you. So getting back to our wonderful far from the tree, the poison in all apples, we don't have a volume or issue number. So we end this with a period. We have a choice here of a digital object identifier and the URL. APA would like us to take the URL. In this case, it's one of the old-fashioned ones that doesn't have the HTTPS. So it would be fine to put DOI : and it is a small D. And then I would need to format it. In your references, the references are double spaced, and they have a hanging indent of 0.5. If you're using Microsoft, usually if you do a right click, and all that information is under the paragraph button. And this is how your piece should appear. You may ask me, is someone actually going to grade me on that level? And as your librarian, I have to say, I cannot teach to all those persons. My responsibility is to prepare you for the most detailed, cruel person who's going to grade your paper. So I'm going to tell you, yes, it is that important. Yes, someone may mark you down for capitalizing the D in DOI. Someone else may not, but your goal is to work towards the person who grades your paper at the most difficult level. That said, sometimes professors have different ideas about what they want to see in their citations or APA, because suppose we use this, we had the URL, not the DOI, and the URL was a database, a subscription database. You would not include that because not everyone can get to Academic Search Premier or Opposing Viewpoint. So you have this really super long URL that no one can actually use. So APA 7th edition says do not use it. However, you may be in a class and make sure you look at your rubrics and your assignments, and your professor will want to have those URLs no matter what the rules are so that they could check your papers. So while this would be correct, always work towards your toughest teacher. Also work towards the person who's grading your paper. So if they have any additions or different ways of dealing with APA or your other citations and references, make sure you follow the rules of the person grading your paper. So those are the two best rules I can give you. Now, I sort of covered this, but I put it here in a link because you will question yourself, like, how am I going to end this? Does it have a DOI? If it has a DOI in APA, you use that. Does it have a URL? Can you get to that URL as anybody? Like, can I just copy and paste that and go there? You will use that URL. If you cannot do that, it's behind a paywall or subscription database, you will have nothing. That's the 3 rules on how you will end it. And this is very important, especially coming from MLA, because it will hurt every bone in your body. Do not put a period at the end of a digital object identifier or the URL. The APA mindset is you're going to copy and paste this and use it immediately. And if you put a period at the end, it will not resolve. Okay. And that was always in my checklist of my work because it was hard for me not to end everything with a period. So, like, would somebody, professor, mark you down for that? There will be a professor who will do that. So try to work to that level and not just what you can get by with. So in text citations, there are also going to be rules, and they're not going to be the same rules as you have with references. And this is one of those painful things about APA. And I have never even shown you what a Facebook reference looks like. That is something you will have to model and see for yourself. But these don't match. You know how up there, if we had multiple authors, we'd use an ampersand. When we're using a narrative citation, we're going to be using and. And when I mean that, let's suppose we're looking at Smith and Mopes 2020. That will be from my reference. That is how it starts. Found out apples were poison. I am citing this because this is not common knowledge. It's very surprising. So I make sure anytime I state things that are different from what others know, that I do have it attached to who said that, who found that to be true. Your other thing you could do in 2020, Smith and Mopes found out apples were poison. And if you do a direct quote and you have a page number, let's see, Smith and Mopes 2020 found apples were absolutely poison. Let me just spell. You want to keep the quote inside, not outside the parentheses. And if you did have page numbers, you would put page 7. More and more, there are not page numbers or paragraph numbers you can use absolutely. But if you do, when you do, there is a style for doing that. But if you leave it out, and just put the period here and end it. That's also acceptable. Now the in-text citation also just uses Smith and Mopes. I need to look at that. 2020, like so. And it ends with a period. And that sometimes is one of the hardest things to do.
Does your and have to be the short, the little squirrely one? It can't be the word and, or is it and?
In-text citation is different. And I'm going to look because I know that's true for narrative pieces. And that's why you always look at a particular book to make sure that you're doing it right. Long paraphrases. Let me kind of go back. Sorry, guys, just got to jump around a little bit. Here we are. Okay, so.
Oh.
Okay, so parenthetical and narrative. So yes, the answer is yes. So the parenthetical at the end has the ampersand, but if you're using it in the text, it's AND.
Okay.
So we gotta make sure we fix that, baby. And I want to tell you how important it is that you do question yourself. And if that becomes a weakness you mark down for, turn it into a checklist and it will become a strength. Now, I think that covers most of the things that may occur, except for say, you had to use, it had no author, and you had to use the title. Just assume it's apples are poison. Yeah. Period. When you don't have an author, you end up using the title. So you have to have the title to match in your in-text citation, and you put it in quotes to show the reader that it's different and it is the title of the piece. So when they see it in your references, they're able to recognize it. And that too will be something, if you can't find it, go to your book and try to look it up, or go to APA style. Now, I want to warn you that you're going to be tempted to Google answers to these questions. And this is why you should not do that. There are APA styles out there on the internet, 5th, 6th, and 7th edition. Oftentimes you don't know which it is. Sometimes the person has interpreted something and it may not be right, which is so easy to do. I think I've demonstrated it several times here. So make sure you go to the source, the APA style blog. Make sure you go look at what they recommend. So if you have a situation with your professor and they mark you down, you could go to that page or to that section and show them what you were using, and you could figure out where you what they expected of you instead, is where I'm going to go with that. So make sure you have the best authority available to you. And this is this one because, and again, the other reason you want to use this is things change. The book does not change, but the APA style page does update and change ideas as information sources change. Now, today I just went over this one because it takes care of the major parts. It doesn't matter if you're doing web pages, Instagram, podcast. Some of these things are always true. The author, last name, first initials, the title case, the sentence case and the title case, the source is going to be title case. Let me make sure I get that right. It's so hard that the title is sentence case. the source title case. Do you see how confusing that is? Because inherently it seems like it should be the opposite. But that is the world you're working in. So make sure you use the links, you look at your pieces, and you always copy and correct. So let's work on these. We have 4 different things, and we're going to finish out with them. Practice. Let me make it a little bit bigger. These are actual pieces from EBSCO that were used for APA. Is there anything wrong with the first APA citation?
Not indented.
Sorry?
It's not indented, like the hanging.
The format is off, double spaced. And we're going to put our hanging indent. Is there anything else wrong with it? Last name, first name and initials. We have the ampersand, ends with a period. We have the publication date in the parentheses, ends with a period. Then we'll look at this. Nothing should be capitalized except for the first word. Word following a colon, a proper noun or noun phrase totally covers it. The sneaky part, the italicized volume number and journal name. The journal name is italicized correctly. The issue number is in parentheses, it ends with a comma. We have beginning and ending page numbers, period. So in that case, there's only one thing we have to change, and this is sneaky. It's what happened to you, even if you're at Harvard, and I think John is the one person who can identify what it is immediately. This is right, but when you're using subscription databases, there's a sign-on source that most people use, and it's going to be included in this URL. It is pretty obvious when you see BBCC that that probably doesn't belong there, and other places you would see it as well. All you have to do is get rid of it and put in a dash, and it becomes the real thing.
Oh.
So you'll see that quite frequently. All right, let's look at this one. What's wrong with this one?
Format is wrong. The last name does not have the and.
The ampersand. Okay, after the journal name,
Yep, ampersand and
year is 2020 there, and that should actually be up behind the authors, and it should be in parentheses.
Yep. Is it one space after that or 2 spaces?
One.
One, okay.
Yes, and some people will come after you for that in case students, you're wondering that. Yeah, some people would mark down for inappropriate spacing, so make sure that's correct. Is there anything else wrong with the authors? This is probably
There's no period.
No periods.
I was gonna say that no periods.
Yeah, it's one of the most frequent things I find in, well, it's in the top 5. In fact, I can't really figure out how they do it, but sometimes you'll see this when students use PubMed or when you are out there using different things on the internet and you don't know really what they're associated with. This is actually an AMA style reference, like it would be right in their world, but wrong in APA world, just to let you know. So you'll see this a lot. So if you go through and correct it, it's good to go. Now we have the publication date in the right place. The title is correct. First word is capitalized. Word after colon is capitalized.
There's a semicolon there.
It is no semicolon there. Do you know what it's supposed to be?
Period.
No. And it's strange. Once you start with the source part, it goes to commas. That makes sense. All these have periods at the end. Once you go to the sources, it's mainly commas. Here, I'm just going to assume this is the issue and it's in parentheses, but what I would do is go and look at it and check to make sure it doesn't have this. Again, it will have a comma and it ends with a period. If it had a volume number, that would also be italicized.
That's what I was just going to ask. So it's only the volume number gets italicized.
Yes, it's very painful and horrifying. That's why if you have a personal checklist of things I will do wrong, absolutely, you will. Actually, my students right now in Lib 101 do not make that mistake at this point, but it's very common. They're still making the AMA mistake, but it's a work in progress.
Now,
So
maybe I missed it, but could you explain what a DOI is for me?
Yeah, it was at the very beginning. It was very fast. The digital object identifier is a number assigned a article and sometimes books and other pieces of information. Not all of them are scholarly works like a scholarly article. Sometimes a letter to the editor will actually have them. But it's ideally how we connect information, how we understand that this article is attached or cited by these other articles, and it creates this huge, beautiful network of numbers and that are connected to each other even after, and we're seeing more and more of this, journals die. They don't have main page numbers, things disappear. We're able to have a place for a thing that identifies them and gives some indication where we can find them in full text. So out of everything, in the end of all, it's possible all of our references will simply be a digital object identifier, and there will not be the need for all this. But we're not there yet. This is where we are. So anyway, so we have two more. I just want to make sure we can get these right. And again, most of it's, well, many people don't actually build them from scratch. I do build them from scratch. I find it easier to do than fixing them. But once you kind of get it, you can fix them kind of rapidly. So what's wrong with this?
Again, formatting needs double space and hanging.
I'm trying to figure out the name.
It ends up being a awkward, but if we were to go here, we would figure out that it just kind of mutilated an academic credential of some kind. They didn't know how to translate it.
Mm.
So then we have 2020 period. Anything else wrong with this?
DOI is wrong. You got the BBC in there.
Just slice it out
Mhm.
and that will work.
You're not supposed to have capital letters in the title, except for the first one.
These are fine. This is not fine. Sometimes you might want to see how it has that general anxiety disorder. You may want to capitalize that, but in APA, unless it's the name of the person, like Crohn's disease with a C, it doesn't get that sort of special treatment, though it may in different other styles. But here, no. The other thing is the capital letter after the colon. And it stays there. P. We have sports psychologist is italicized, as is the volume number. We have beginning and ending page numbers, period. And we fixed the DOI. So that's ready to roll. And I'm not going to check every single thing on this one. I may after the fact. So we know the format's wrong. What
And
else is wrong with
The names are all capitalized.
Ooh.
I'm just going to highlight these. There's two things wrong with these. I maybe Chicago uses capital letters, but anytime you see something all capitalized and it's not an acronym, no matter what style you're in, you need to probably fix it. That's something that's pulling from a journal, and it's gonna be something you need to fix. So They need to be first, last name, first initials. And this does have an ampersand. Is there anything else wrong with this?
After HIV, where it has semicolons, the A has to be capitalized.
Yes. Yes.
And
I have to put that on my checklist.
Suck up.
do you put a P down by pages as well? Oh, no.
No. Yeah, that's one of the most painful things for people. This is a pure numerical statement in APA. There's no pages, there's no hashtags, no volume, no issue, no VL period, all sorts of things people, it's actually beautiful and clearly stated, I guess, once you know what it is. And of course, you need to make sure the volume number, and this is italicized and the capitalization is correct. And we're going to get rid of the sign-on information to make sure the DI is correct. And you guys essentially help correct an APA reference section.
When you change the name from all capitals to regular, the little other additional marks, do you have to leave those exactly in like that?
Yes. What is it? Diacritic marks?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And actually, there's a whole section in APA about different names, because some like De Soto and things like that, and sometimes they vary by country. There's not a set piece. So when you see those names, make sure you grab your book, your manual, or go to the APA style blog piece. Do not Google that, because you're going to find numerous answers all over the place, but make sure you use the authority of APA to make that decision so you can fix them. Anytime you have a thing that's a question, go to APA. And that is everything I'm going to present here. I'm going to fix up that one piece and send it to you. I want you to know we have support services to help you with your APA. We have the Writing Center. You can get to them online. The library will also help you. There are some authoritative writing style sources in addition to APA. The only one I would recommend would be the Purdue Online Writing Lab. They have a close working relationship with APA and sometimes share sources. So I do find that one to be mostly fine. If you have questionable, I'm sorry?
No citation machine?
I got them down here. I'll explain my problem with them. Oh, there is a citation machine now on OWL that I don't think I have listed here. It now makes you watch an advertisement to see it. And the thing is, if there's a garbage in and garbage out rule with many of these citation pieces, if you don't know how to capitalize and you type in with capitals, it's not going to fix that. If you don't put in beginning and ending page numbers or something like that, it's not going to fix that for you. It's not going to fix a lot of your capitalization. And if you're missing an element, if you needed to put a bracketed comment in something like a Facebook area or something like that, it's not going to fix that for you. So you still need to know the rules to be able to really get the most you can get out of those. If you're missing citation elements, Google Scholar and Crossref are the place to go. Crossref is a place you can reliably find a digital object identifier. When you're working on a paper that has over 10 scholarly articles, you will probably want to go there because it's just going to save you time in typing to have the real deal. These are the citation generators that I often say that are okay. And I just discovered this one. Zotero Bib, it's a browser-based piece, and it does look like it fixes your capitalization errors when you use APA, but always copy and correct. So I feel confident about that one, and they do not make you look at a video. Scribbler APA generator is good, but still you have to input the information, and if you don't capitalize something or make some other error about an author's name, it's not going to fix it for you. So make sure you're aware of those. And if you are confident, those are really great places to go. Now, these citation management tools probably right now are more than you need at Big Bend Community College, but I want you to know they're coming. And if you want to go ahead and start working at this level, You will not regret it. These are free. They're called Mendeley and Zotero, and you download them onto your computer. There's lots of YouTube sites about them, but they are really, they help you package your annotations, do highlights, take notes. In some cases, they keep copies of the actual work, and they start building your reference page for you as you go through. So when you're working, I'd say when you start working with over 15 or 20 different references, this is the level you need to start working at, because it truly does become very difficult to keep up with all this information. Some people use spreadsheets and things like that, but you know, that spreadsheet is not going to build you a reference. So these are the levels I would advise you to use. And if you're already struggling, it might be a great place to begin. It's up to how you want to do them. And there's so many user groups and videos on these. It's well supported.
Are those free sources?
Yes, they are free. They do have pay aspects. I think Mendeley hits the pay aspect pretty fast, but you will find sometimes when you, especially moving towards graduate school, that you'll have entire departments that will prefer one thing over the other. Like one of the places I worked at the university, the psychology department would swear by Mendeley, but the sociology department wanted them to use Zotero.
So, of course they would.
There's always biases in there, or like reasons they may be good. But because the psychology department, it does like base itself on empirical things. If you're working at a scholarly level, I have a feeling that Mendeley might be better package for you to start with and learn and survive with you throughout your whole academic career. So it has a lot of utility free and upfront too. So do you guys have any questions?
Oh,
Do you feel confident you know where to go to find the answers to some of these perplexing questions?
Yeah, that librarian named Rhonda. I'm gonna
That is absolutely true. I will go over, I will, like if we can't get together, if you send me your reference page or your piece, I will go through with a video and go through this whole thing with you.
You're gonna get Fabiola's dissertation. You know it, right?
Well,
you
I
are.
used to check. That used to be part of my job. I love doing that. I can find a secondary source and pull. Oh, yeah.
You sure get it to her before she gets tenure, Fab.
I really enjoy that word. I know it sounds weird because this looks painful and hideous. I know to many people and many students and people involved in it, but it has a beauty to it. It's a language. Like when you read a piece of work, like once you sort of understand citation styles, when you read the references, you already kind of get an idea of whether or not the article itself has any value. So,
I can see where that checklist idea would be gold. I mean,
Yeah.
there's just too many little elements to have to try to remember unless you do it a lot.
Yeah.
I used to have a handout. I haven't changed one for 7th, but nurses really need the checklist. It's kind of like how they work and they're already set up. So if you have something for all pieces and they're able to go through it, you'll see that their references improve immensely because they need to, because you need to go through the authors. Like when you have more than 20 to check your work, you need to go through the authors. You need to go through your dates. Then you go through your titles. You got to go through the source pieces or you won't see it.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the whole thing, then you start questioning yourself like, what? And if you're like working with one rule, you'll just have your author page up and you'll know how to deal with that after about 20 of them. Like, oh, okay, I understand this. Okay, let me look at the publication date section and then have your resource next to you. It's much easier.
So, Rhonda, would you scroll back up to our Johnny Appleseed example? I have this vague recollection that we didn't include page numbers in there.
We didn't include the page numbers. I knew it. Yeah, you're totally right. It was 6 to 10, and we did not put.
No, I didn't know if that was something new that we weren't including because nobody has page numbers anymore. But then as you worked down, I thought, oh, they were including page numbers.
Yeah, no, they totally have page numbers. And I didn't mention the retrieved rule because I'm not working with web pages. But if you have a web page that changes or might be updated, this would not be a PDF. It would be, say, like the about section of a web page. You would put a retrieve statement. But that information, if you go to the references, is one of the examples.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of things. This is a thimble full of APA, but I wanted to hit one of the main and moderately difficult pieces to be able to discuss at least some of the elements.
I wonder who decided 20 was the magic number for authors.
It used to
What
be,
level of ridiculous are we going to cut this off at?
well, I
Right.
guess, well, you know, the thing is, if I was number 18, I'd be thank you.
Well,
Is a person doing it now? Because it used to be 7 or 8. I can't remember. I was one of the, it's like 20 and 21. I'm always going to have to check. I'm not sure which one it is.
well,
There's
I
7 or
think in the
8.
new digital age when it's easier to type it and it's all electronic. I mean, back in the old days when we were typing those suckers on a typewriter, that'd have been insane.
This is monstrous. Okay. So I'm going to fix that. I'm going to double check some things. And
I think you had page numbers listed in your note.
it is. It is. I need to put it here. 6 to 10, period.
Mm.
And that turns this into a comma. Because again, as Amanda pointed out, there's the painfulness of part of it using periods to end the element section, and the source section is considered kind of all as one way you could think of it. And that's why it has the commas.
Mhm.
And no period at the end.
No period at the end.
Killing
Definitely
the
something to put on the
standard.
checklist. I know it's very painful to untrain yourself that information. Very hard.
Well, that's why I've always argued, we need to just pick one style and just make everybody do the same one. To have all the different ones is just always struck me as ridiculous.
It's ridiculous because even when you get to journal level and you start submitting your work to journals, they'll use APA based something, but they'll change something like they want their titles in capitals. They don't want you to put this.
Different instructors will turn it around and say, well, this is the standard, but I want you to do it this way.
Yes. And that's why the person who's grading your paper is the ultimate arbiter of what your paper should look like. So if they have examples, they ask you to put URLs in for every single thing. You put those URLs in there because that does help a person grade papers. So it'd be a lot easier to have that. If not, you have to hunt for it. I enjoy the hunt, but I know not a lot of people enjoy doing that sort of
Crazy
thing.
librarians, though. That's
It just shows me you did something right. If I can't find your reference, there's something wrong. So it gives me the thrill of true crime chase. So I'm good with that. Okay, do you guys have any other questions or anything? All right.
Yeah.
I'll be sending you a fixing. I'm going to go over my work because that's one of the very important things about APA. Go over your work a few times, kind of look at it fresh, because sometimes you forget something minor, like the page numbers. You forget this is an and not an ampersand. And go through, and if you find, again, these are recurring errors that you make that checklist, and it's going to improve your life immensely, especially if you're going into the social sciences, parts of education, and of course, science. And that's it. So I'm open. I love doing one-on-ones. If you want to share a paper with me, if you want to reach out to me, you can use the Ask a Librarian that's on every one of our library pages, or reach out to me individually. I'll be glad to work with you. And that's it. So you guys have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rhonda.